Geek Therapy Radio.
Twist and charm till you relented, leading to impending doom. Opportunity presented, couldn't bear to leave the room. Tears were streaming down our faces, fists were pounding at the door. People stopping our embraces, throw the men onto the floor. A story of one-sided attraction, conditional love, welcoming distraction, physical touch, human interaction. It's all too much time to get some action. A story of one-sided attraction.
Welcome to Geek Therapy Radio. I'm your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. As always, thank you for tuning in here on a Saturday night. Real quick point of discussion with my audience here is that Geek Therapy Radio, I'm not counting all my eggs yet, but I had a good meeting today, and it's a potential that Geek Therapy Radio in the near future, within the next year, can be moved to a better time slot when the sun is shining. But again, this is show business, not counting my eggs. It's one thing you learn pretty quickly here. Jeremy's my guest, by the way.
Hey!
is that so my wife and I were watching Marvelous Miss Maisel. Have you watched it yet?
It's one of my favorite shows on right now.
Okay, so I'm not going to do any spoiler alert, but as you can tell from a show about an up-and-coming comedian, especially in the 50s, but any sort of performer at all, she gets some breaks here and there. And so I'm at the point where she's got one of her first breaks. And again, that's not a spoiler. That's just what you can naturally assume about a show like this. Breaks and heartbreaks and whatever. Mm-hmm. So she gets her first kind of big break. And immediately, coming from working in the business that we do, I'm just thinking like, I wouldn't be celebrating so much right now. You don't know. You haven't gotten your first pay yet. Like, you haven't made a dime off of it yet. There's still a lot that can happen. Sometimes people can tell you, yeah, let's do this thing. And then it doesn't happen, or you think you get this big break and it doesn't happen. So the point is, yes, it's very exciting when you think you're going to get a break, but you don't count your eggs. And that's kind of where I'm at too.
But somebody also sees the potential to say that even if you got the mention of saying, hey, there might be an opportunity here, somebody sees potential in your show.
Yes.
And that lets you know that there's a future for it.
Right. So what I'm saying is I don't mean to detract from the excitement of saying, hey, things could be going well for you. I'm just saying that you learn in this business, and Jeremy, you're in this business too, that you don't count your eggs until they hatch. So I'm just saying there's a potential. I had a good meeting that the show could be moving forward to a better hour, maybe more hours.
Congratulations, man. Well, a pre-congratulations.
A pre-congratulations. So I'm just letting the audience know that the time could change if you are a regular broadcast listener and for some reason haven't subscribed to the podcast. That's just a little bit of news. It could happen in the next year. Last time I said this, I got bumped down from midnight to 10 p.m. So it's potential.
I mean, all the nightly shows that happen on TV, they do the same thing, one step at a time.
Exactly. So don't be surprised if I make an announcement in the next year that, hey, new time slot. So moving on to meat and potatoes of at least this segment here. CES is going on right now. Usually I like to keep the shows as evergreen as possible, but it's 2020, it's January. That means CES. So what I wanted to talk with you, Jeremy, is, has there been any technology that we've seen this year, any products or anything that you are aware of that you are either really bamboozled by, excited about, or that it's kind of, do you think things are kind of status or lame, or has anything caught up to you? What do you wish to see this year?
I want 8K TVs to pop up in the mainstream, which they just have, and now it's becoming a bigger thing. Yes, it's the new expensive thing, but I also know that that's going to bring down the prices of the 4K TVs, which is more of my market and my budget. So I'm very happy about that. And on top of gaming and on top of bringing those 4K prices down, we're now at the brink of graphics cards keeping up with 4K. So we bring down the prices of 4K because 8K is coming in. That's going to make graphics cards try to strive for new 8K results. And on top of that, that's going to bring down the prices of those monitors to make it more affordable for people like me.
That's a really good point there, is that while there may not be a ton of 8K content out there, the fact that 8K not monitors, but 8K TVs and such are becoming more mainstream means that the 4K stuff, the price will come down naturally there. So if a lot of people, there are still a ton of people that have not made the jump from 1080 to 4K, and then there's still a lot of people that don't see any sort of benefit from it. And I will say that especially when TVs are concerned, the bigger screen size you go, the more benefit you get from 4K. I've also heard the argument that depending on the content, 4K versus 8K content on, let's say, a 50-inch TV, that it's hard to tell.
I've heard that too. That
the technology of the TV, the actual makeup of the panel of the TV makes up more difference. For instance, between LCD and OLED. Or what's the new one?
The new dimming and the new micro LEDs and stuff that are popping up. So there's a lot of new technology that's becoming mainstream, and I like the idea of it. That's the new expensive. It's no longer 4K is the most expensive right now. It's now 8K is going to be that new goal that everybody's going to want to reach for with their $80,000 TVs that only 2 people in the world have. But at least it's not 4K anymore. That's going to bring down those prices. And I want that 80-inch TV in my house. I still have a TV that's probably like 10 years old. It's a 1080p little LG TV, a 42-inch, which I say little, but in today's standards, 42 inches was the big size back in the day.
So that's also a good point, is that maybe you made it intentionally or unintentionally, that people don't upgrade their TVs as often as you'd think that TV manufacturers would lead you to believe. That there are still a lot of people out there with a 10-year-old 720p TV. It's kind of like a car. Usually you don't upgrade your car every single year. There are ballers that do that. That's fine. But when people make a television purchase, they usually stick with that television for years and years and years. So yes, while we might complain, 8K is so expensive and it's becoming more mainstream, yes, you're not gonna, if your 4K TV's still working, you're gonna still be rocking that for the next 5 or 6 years, what have you. But 8K is coming down the pipe, and that's really cool. So we're gonna leave the segment there. We'll come back to more CES talk, more kind of tech talk, I think, in the next segment. Jeremy, if you can stick around, if you're good.
I'm here.
All right, so let's do that. Maybe talk about a little Xbox or PS5 action coming up. So the music you're listening to tonight, bumping in and out, is from an artist. His name is Yanni Safra, and I will include links in the podcast below where you can go find his music. I'll also tell you at the end of the broadcast where you can go find his music. But I love showcasing up and coming artists. So that's all the bump music tonight. More Geek Therapy Radio coming up. Jeremy Benson is joining me. Stick around.
A story of one-sided attraction, conditional love, welcoming distraction, physical touch, human interaction. It's all too much. Time to get some action. A story.
Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. As mentioned, the bump music in and out is from an artist named Yanni Safra. I'll include his information in the podcast description, so make sure if you're listening just to the broadcast of this on KPRC 950 AM, subscribe to the podcast so you can get the links and stuff in the podcast description. At the end of the show, I'll be sure to mention where to go to get his music regardless. But Jeremy Benson is joining me for the show today, as he often does, because he often comes to the studio and we wind up talking about tech stuff and games and all sorts of things. And I say, hey, can I kidnap you for a moment here and just turn on some microphones and let's talk about it. We've been talking about, say hi, Jeremy.
Hey, it's just hard being a nerd alone, man. Like,
right.
You need to be able to talk this stuff out with some of your friends or get excited about stuff like this. I love talking tech and geek stuff.
Awesome. So we've been talking about CES. In the last segment, we were talking about just kind of going over TV technology, 8K technology coming out, what that really means for the consumer, what that really means for you. Doesn't mean that, you're going to go out and spend $5,000, $10,000, whatever on an 8K TV just because they're becoming more prevalent. It means that the 4K stuff becomes all the more accessible and all the cheaper. So on that note, they're really, at CES, I've been keeping tabs on it. I haven't really been talking much about it in the podcast. I have been talking about some things that I've seen at CES. I think, really to me, my main takeaway from CES this year, like the biggest thing for me, the most waves, as it has been for the last couple of years, has been AMD. Specifically AMD coming out with their new notebook processors. So their consumer grade 15 watt through 45 watt and beyond consumer grade 8-core 16-thread processors. And it's so ground shaking that companies like Dell have gone away from Intel with their mobile CPUs, and they're now offering way more models with AMD CPUs. So, Jeremy, I just want to get your take on that.
That's a huge breakthrough. People don't understand what that really means for AMD, and like this is such a huge jump for this brand. Back in the day, it used to be any computer that was coming out was only going to go Intel, and that's pretty much all you would find in there, just because they had the power, and that's pretty much you're getting the bang for your buck on whatever type of PC you want to buy.
Like pre-builds
for sure. Yeah, laptops
from
and whatnot
from Dell and other companies.
And now we're seeing laptops come into the market, especially at CES, and they don't even have Intel anywhere. It's almost you're looking around going, something's not right here. I'm not used to this kind of a change.
So the thing is that Intel is definitely in the spectrum. They're definitely on the landscape. They're just... I talked earlier in a previous podcast. Oh, I thought I saw a tornado out there. It's just some text
Don't you scare me like that.
No. It's just some text on the silk screen of the window or whatever it is, the new things they put up. Anyways, that Intel, I talked on the recent podcast that they have embarrassed themselves with this PCIe 4.0 protocol and new chipset coming to motherboards and processors, but it's only AMD motherboards and processors that are going to benefit and are rolling out PCIe 4.0 first, and that Intel, at the absolute earliest, is going to release PCIe 4.0, very wishful thinking, in 2021. That there's still at least an entire year that Intel is not going to have PCIe 4.0 compatibility. And the reason why that's embarrassing is that Intel also makes solid state storage that they're building on the PCIe 4.0, to take advantage of that new speed, but they can't test their new solid state drives. Intel themselves have to source AMD to test the PCIe 4.0. And isn't that just the most poignant state of affairs for Intel right now? That shows you how far AMD has come.
I'm gonna have to do my research on this to find out more, but here's another thing that I've heard is the new Thunderbolt 4 that's supposed to be coming out. And so apparently they have now labeled, Intel has said, we got Thunderbolt 4 coming out, but all it is rebranding of Thunderbolt 3. So that's supposed to be one of their key points of saying Intel is going, hey, buy one of ours because we're compatible with Thunderbolt 4, but there's no new speed increase. There's no new benefit from what I understand. It's just a rebranding of Thunderbolt 3.
Right. I'd have to research that more myself. I do know that Thunderbolt now, at least the newest incarnations of it, are not going to be, they're not proprietary anymore. That it is open up for AMD to have Thunderbolt. I don't believe, as of recording right now, and I have listeners that I know will correct me on Twitter if I'm wrong about this, but I haven't personally seen, and it's not like I don't have Google right in front of me.
It's on ASRock. I think if you're talking about on an AMD board, I think ASRock is the only one that has it right now, but I'm sure it's going to be expanding. So
AMD Thunderbolt, and I hope I don't prove you wrong right here. I hope I don't, because you don't see it too much on the AMD side of things, and one reason that is because it's proprietary. Why is the internet so slow? Maybe it's these storms coming out.
I think it's one brand right now has it built into their motherboards. Other brands don't have it, but I think it's ASRock is the main one that has it.
Oh, that's an Intel. I'm not going to look it up while we're recording right now. The point is that you don't see much Thunderbolt
on AMD side
on the AMD side of things. That's going to change. PCIe 4.0 is only available on AMD right now, and that's just how far AMD has come in competition with Intel, and why that's a good thing.
It was so quick. It's almost like, where did you come from? And I know AMD's been around for a long time, but man, they've really rise to power.
And AMD really has. But here's a point of discussion that I would like to raise with you, Jeremy, and listener. I take a little bit of issue. I'm ecstatic that AMD has just flown forward, has just blasted, nipping on Intel's heels, and in many ways surpassed them now. I'm glad for that growth, that rapid growth in the past few years. What I take issue with is a lot of people tend to, enough for it to get on my radar, seem to be relishing in the demise of Intel, because Intel in the past they know they were the only major contender in the game, so they could jack their prices up way high, because you're not going to go get an AMD thing because it's only half as good as an Intel. So Intel has been notorious for jacking the prices way up. Nvidia was the same way with graphics cards, because AMD to a lesser degree
they've done the exact same thing.
So but I get all that. I don't think we should be celebrating Intel's recent demise. Intel's not going anywhere, by the way. Like, not anytime soon. They're not going to be irrelevant for a long time, if ever. They may spring back forward with some other revolutionary tech. Who knows? But we shouldn't relish in their recent demise, because AMD, if they're top dog, if Intel falls so far behind, what do you think AMD is going to do? I'm not saying that they will or won't do this, but
if they take Intel's place.
If they take Intel's place, what is to stop AMD from saying, well, you're not going to buy Intel. Let's jack up the prices of our CPUs
business.
just the way. It's just business.
It's business.
So my issue is that we shouldn't be anti-Intel or glad Intel's getting their comeuppance, because at the end of the day, that means less competition, which means basically you're cheering on and hoping for your own your pocketbook to hurt, for less options for the consumer. So it doesn't do anybody any benefit to actively wish for Intel's demise.
You just want to hope, you pray for the competition. You pray for the high competition, that they're fighting for the market, but you don't want someone to win, because that's going to make one business be better than they would have been if they had no competition in the first place.
So what I'm hoping for here is that for the next decade, at least, for the foreseeable future, that AMD and Intel keep trading blows. I want Intel to come back around. Our 11th generation processors edge out AMD, and then AMD's next generation processors have that edge out Intel. Keep edging each other out, because that keeps the prices for us consumers who love to build PCs low. Do you have anything real quick to add to that? Because I'm going to get out of this segment.
It's going to be more or less like, I think Intel's going to be behind for another couple of years because they weren't planning on AMD's rise to power so fast. I think that we're going to see a delay in Intel and how they are able to compete, but I think eventually in a couple of years we're going to start seeing that competition you're hoping for.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. So in the next segment, let's talk about I think next generation consoles. Oh, the modular PCs that you brought up.
Yeah, you saw that, huh?
Yep. So on the way out here, you're listening to my featured artist of the evening. I keep mispronouncing his name, Yoni Safra, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Yoni Safra. You're listening to his music, bumping in and out. Coming back on Geek Therapy Radio, we're going to keep the discussion going with CES news and modular PCs. Not the modular PC that you might be thinking. More coming up on Geek Therapy Radio. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Ago, the whole world was changed. The music would flow and passions exchange.
Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. I'm your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger, with my mental guest. That sounds weird. So when my wife's on the show, rarely, I call her the mental missus.
Okay.
And it just now dawned on me that it's like, I'm calling you a crazy person. That's not what I mean. So anyways, as I alluded to in the last segment, we're going to talk about modular PCs. Intel has introduced at CES, at least it's a prototype now. I don't think you can go out and buy it anytime soon, like within the next few months. Maybe you can. We'll see. A lot of times what happens at CES is manufacturers bring out these prototypes and concepts, and they never really see the light of day. So we'll see where Intel is going with this. But it's modular PC, as I understand it, and I've seen some pictures and read up just a little bit between the break, is so picture, for those who don't know for those familiar with building a PC, a graphics card. Basically a card that you slide into a PCI Express slot, give you graphics boost, all that good stuff. There's also sound cards and other peripheral cards that you put in those PCI slots to expand your system even more. What Intel is doing is picture a graphics card in that big rectangular thing with the bracket that snaps into the motherboard. It's like that, but also with things like your CPU. so that what you can do is easily buy this brick basically that has the heat sink and fan included on the actual in the actual apparatus itself, so that if you want to swap out a CPU, it's not a matter of opening up your case, removing the heat sink, and fiddling around with the inherently kind of delicate process of swapping out the CPU chip itself. It's all just in this thing that looks like a graphics card now, and just slot in, slide out. You want to go from an i7 to an i9, 10 seconds, pop it out, and pop the new one back in.
And think about how you upgrade your graphics card. That's the easiest way to think of it. You want better graphics, you want more horsepower on a CPU that's still legitimate today. What do people are upgrading their graphics card? So imagine being able to just change your CPU out just like that.
And it's in a container that is just as big as, if not smaller than, an Xbox Series X, a PlayStation 5, a console. So the computer itself gets small. My main immediate kind of concern with this is that, Jeremy, I know you're on board with this concept also. It's something that I've been doing for the past few years when I build PCs, and a lot of other people out there. One of the benefits of a bigger PC case, or having that freedom to build it as big or small as you want, is that if you build it a little bit bigger into a half tower, full tower, whatever the form factor is, when you have the option of going a bigger form factor, you get a quieter PC, a more powerful PC, and what I care about most, a quiet PC. With these modular designs, with these modular concepts, where the i9 is built into the actual, it looks like a graphics card. The enclosure looks like a graphics card. You can't choose there's less of an option as far as cooling goes.
True, and they're saying expect laptop speeds, because you're not going to be able to overclock it as hard like some people normally do. So whatever kind of chips and graphics cards that you would normally put in a laptop, that's what you're going to be getting in the type of performance out of these little modular setups, because
I see
that's what the benefit. But again, think of a server room, or think of even mining and stuff like that, which I'm not into. You could buy basically a huge case and just lock in all these CPUs, or the way you lock in graphics cards, and now you've got like a server room in this simple little setup of the way that they pop right in there.
The hot swappability, hot swapping.
Oh, you need an upgrade? Let's buy 5 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're done. And there's your upgrade. That's simple for some people, and I can see how for somebody that doesn't want to get as intricate and how much hard the complications it takes to build your own PC.
Right.
And it makes it so much simpler if you want to reach a different market that doesn't want to get into those type of complications.
Right. The customer who is not going to build their own custom water cooling loop. That's not who this is geared towards. These modular PCs are geared towards. It's basically an ease of use, a simplicity of life upgrade path type of thing. And I definitely see that it can serve its case there, serve its purpose there. Serve its case.
Yeah, I heard that too.
No pun intended. That's just a bad choice of words. That's not even a pun. That's not even a good pun. It's just me not knowing how to talk. So there's definitely use case scenario there. I would imagine, and I would like to reiterate here, that for custom PC builders, this will have no effect on the DIY PC builder enthusiast route. It's not like AMD and Intel is going to say, all right, we're not going to sell the bare chips anymore. It has to be in this modular enclosure. That's not going to happen. Mark my words. That's not going to happen within the next decade or so. So if you want to buy your RTX new generation 3000 series, whatever, take off whatever cooling solution is built onto the card and put your own custom water block on there and do whatever you want. Same thing with the CPU. You get a new AMD Threadripper. You don't want it to be locked into an enclosure or whatever. You can you'll still be able to adapt your cooling solutions and your custom builds the way you want. You don't have to buy modular PCs. It's not going to be the only thing offered on the market.
They're just trying to reach out for another market, and for certain people that just, like I said, don't want to deal with as complicated as building your own PC. But the cool part is I'm seeing only right now, with the little bit of research that I've done on it, I'm only seeing the name Intel on this so far. I haven't seen AMD, so that might be another way for them to stay current.
Yes, still, if we can't sell these processors, they're not going to stand up to AMD. But maybe if we make it way easier, you're right. That's a common business model is, hey, this thing isn't as powerful as the competitor, say, but it's way easier than what the competitors offer. And what the competitor is offering, and there's a lot of value to people there is ease of life, quality of life versus, yes, you can buy this more powerful thing, but you're going to have to, if you're good at, building PCs yourself. On that note, building custom PCs nowadays, it's if you can put together 2 pieces of Lego, you can build a custom PC.
Yeah, it's true. They made it a lot easier, and you don't have to read the instructions as much, and even websites will help you put it together, and all the YouTube research you can do.
It's really fun, and most people who build their first PC are like, this is easier than I thought it was. It used to not be so easy, 10 years ago it was still pretty easy, but if you go back a couple decades, 20 years ago, it was pretty complicated. We can debate back and forth to how much benefit there was, other than it was cheaper. It was usually cheaper to build your own PC. The disparity between cheaper to build your own PC versus buying a pre-built, that gap has narrowed a bit.
Yeah, big time.
You can still save money building it yourself for the most part, but sometimes there's not much money to be saved there. And for a lot of people, they'd say, well, if there's not any cost savings, and then it's only a therapeutic thing. It's fun to tinker with and build it yourself.
Well, and I'm going to be able to keep this PC case that I have right now for the next couple of PCs that I built, hopefully, if it stays current. And think about that saves $150 for a case. Or, you can still transition parts over. That'll save you money in the future.
That is absolutely critically true. Thank you for reminding me of that. When you build let's say you build your first custom PC, you've bought your power supply separately, your graphics card separately, your motherboard separately, all the different peripherals and hard drives and RAM and all that stuff separately. You save hundreds of dollars going to your next build because you already have a good power supply, you already have a good graphics card, you already have all your storage and RAM sorted out if we haven't gone to DDR4 or whatever. By then, you still have a lot of parts left over from your old build that saves you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars going to your new build. That's probably the biggest pro of getting into building a custom PC for yourself, is because in the future, you're definitely going to upgrade. You absorbed a lot of the cost at the front to make any future upgrade all the cheaper.
And you will be upgrading certain parts as things go. Cases are going to become not as efficient. They're going to become not as pretty or not as modern. And on top of that, the USB connections built into the case. There might be a couple of generations of USB 9 that come out in the future, and your USB 3 is not going to be as relevant anymore. But eventually you'll have to upgrade certain parts, but it can save you a lot of money in the long run.
Right. And that's like saying, I think it's foolish to assume somebody getting into a new hobby and saying, this is all I'm going to spend on it. It's like a golfer buying one set of clubs. It's like, I'm never going to buy new clubs. You don't have to buy new clubs all the time, but come on, if you're really interested in the hobby, if you really love the hobby, you're going to convince yourself that you need a new $500 driver every once in a while. So yes, you'll have your old PC case sitting around. You're like, I could use that case, or you have your old power supply laying around. You're like, oh, I could go for a 90 plus certified now. Like you're always going to be upgrading. Then if you want to get into RGB and all that kind of stuff, all the little accessories that
Didn't you
come
just
along.
have some parts laying around the house the other day, and you just decided to put them all together and build a PC?
Yes, I'm making a YouTube video about that, around the Q6600 Core 2 quad that came out in 2007, to see how relevant it is today, especially for content creation and production like that. So stay tuned for that. In the next segment, I think we'll talk about consoles or...
Ooh, the new console's coming out. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah. So more Geek Therapy Radio coming up. Again, you're listening to Yanni Safra. That's the bump music I'm using in and out. Go check him out. It's in the podcast description. More coming up with Jeremy Benson in the next segment. Stick around. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. Got your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger, and...
Mr. Jeremy B. Benson.
Jeremy B. Benson?
Jeremy B. Benson.
Jeremy B. No, we have not been drinking. All right. So the bump music you've been hearing back and forth, Yanni Safra, 17-year-old up-and-coming musician. So show him some support. He's all over Spotify and iTunes and all that good stuff, and YouTube. Just type in YONI space SAFFRA. Yanni Safra. Look up his music, show him some support. He's a teenager. Pretty good, huh? I always love showcasing new musicians, up-and-comers here on Geek Therapy Radio, because we're all geeks about something. And a lot of us are geeks about music. Some of us are such geeks about music that we like to make music. I know Jeremy and I like to make music.
I just bought a banjo, Johnny. I'm learning how to play the banjo. I bought it from a friend for $100, and this thing is so awesome.
5-string. You know you're a geek about music.
I just always wanted to learn how to play it.
When you buy a banjo.
I'm going to learn the Ballad of Jed Clampett. Let me tell you a story about a man named Jed. Oh, that's going to be my first song that I learned. I cannot wait.
Awesome. All right, so going back to CES and new video game consoles coming out, I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on this next generation of consoles. We've seen the teases and the showcases from Sony with the PlayStation 5 and Microsoft with their horribly named Xbox Series X. So I saw some funny memes, and Sony's been taking some light ribbing, some ribbing in good nature for their revolutionary new logo.
Yeah, I heard everybody's real excited about that. Big change is in the way.
And they basically went into Microsoft Paint and erased the 4 and put in a 5 of the exact same font. And you know what? It's lighthearted ribbing, but I am so happy and thankful and just like, yes, that's awesome that all Sony is doing for the next generation of PlayStation is just putting a 5 there.
Parents that are buying consoles for their kids won't be confused.
Yes.
They won't have to go see some new logo and go, is that it?
Right.
So I think that might even help them.
Yeah, it absolutely will help them. You had the PlayStation, which now we refer to as the PS1. It wasn't called PS1 when it came out, but you had the PlayStation 2, 3, 4, 5. Xbox is just screaming in the corner, having a meltdown with Xbox One, Xbox One S, One X.
That can get confusing.
My goodness, it can get confusing. For most of us, I don't think it's that big of a deal. But again, a 12-year-old asking their parents for an Xbox Series, they could very well go out and buy an Xbox One S. They may not have. They're not as. There's a lot of parents out there that just call it all Nintendo. Mm-hmm. Turn off your Nintendo.
Turn off your video games.
This is a PlayStation 4 Pro. It's a Nintendo. Turn it off. Anyways, so the next generation of consoles. Where I wanted to start out with, what do you think? How much do you think it's going to cost? I'll just say that in a previous podcast, I estimated that it's probably going to be around $300 or $400, just like the last generation. Mm-hmm. But then I take that back. I officially retract that statement. I do not think it's going to be as cheap as $300 or $400. I think it might be a little more expensive. I don't think it's going to be $600, $700 like the PS3 was. Where do you think the price point?
$500. Okay. I think 500, and I think Xbox is coming out with 2 consoles. No, I don't. I think some leaks have happened, and I think, but it's not confirmed from what I've been educated with in the past. I haven't looked up the new console news up as recently, but I think PlayStation is looking close to 500. I think, and then and I think Xbox is coming out with 2 versions, unless they've canceled that. But one's going to be cheaper, and the other is going to be more expensive.
So I'm reading this right off the cuff. I Googled it while you were explaining it. From techradar.com, PS5 won't be as bad as we thought if this leak is... Okay, so it's a leak, and the leak says $400... You're right, $499. I wasn't doubting you, but I just wanted to be as current as I can if Google's right behind me. $500. So what do you think Xbox Series X? Do you think they're going to be...
I think that it's smart. If it's still happening, if Xbox comes out with 2 consoles, think about it. One of them's going to be cheaper to beat the price of the PlayStation. Now you've got people that just want to game on new consoles, and now you've got a better price. That's tempting for some people. Then if you want to have the more powerful one, which is going to be more powerful than the PlayStation, and you want to have the most powerful console, you have another option. So they can not only claim to be the cheapest, but they can also claim to be the most powerful. And that's a win in some markets.
So you think at cheapest... 400 maybe at most
I
expensive.
bet they're going to beat them
around
by
there.
$100, or they'll find a way to bring it down the price. They have to, because think about how much of a win that would be. Wasn't it there was a generation where someone was going to be more expensive, and somebody came out, like, didn't the Xbox 360, it won that generation because the PlayStation 3 at the time was way more expensive. So Xbox had pretty much the same games, and they did a great job on their exclusives.
Yeah, that's a big thing too. Exclusives. Speaking of exclusives, what effect do you think the next generation of consoles is going to have on gamers?
Man, think about this. Like, it's going to change the way that gamers are for the future. I know Stadia is not really doing too well, but imagine all the DVDs that you had at first. Probably, let's say you bought 50 DVDs because you had to watch those movies, and then Netflix comes out and Blu-ray. You've got less Blu-ray movies, most of us, than you do DVDs. And then here comes these 4K DVDs, and you're going to probably have less of those because everything's on demand.
Right.
These new consoles are creating a generation of on-demand gamers. You're going to have this Project xCloud where you're going to be able to stream 200, 300 games, and you might not want to buy games anymore. And you're going to be thinking about, do I just want to buy my 5 games that are exclusives and just play the console out to its generation? Or do I want to have this $10 a month type of subscription thing where I can own 200 games?
I think that's the main takeaway is the subscription-based gaming, whether that's game streaming just off of a server farm somewhere, it's being streamed to your console. Actually, as I'm saying that, the one counterpoint I would have to that, to just streaming through the cloud, is why would you buy a $500 ultra powerful, console and just basically stream a game off of a server farm? Because
they offer the option to download the game still, and then so that's the win. That's how you're going to beat Stadia.
Exactly. That was to my point, is that it'll be a subscription-based service that you can just download the games or the portions of the games that you need. Maybe you don't need to let's say a game, because games are going to become massive in file size. Absolutely gargantuan file sizes. Now, with increased storage and everything, I don't know off the top of my head what the built-in storage for PS5 or Series X is going to be.
I'm going to guess a
imagine,
terabyte.
Yeah,
or more.
I'm going to guess baseline 512, probably a terabyte, if not more, and easily upgradable. Even current console generation, you can easily upgrade the hard drive. You can even have external hard drive. So anyway, at either rate, consoles are going. The games for the consoles are going to get bigger than ever, more massive than ever, and we still have data caps. Most ISPs have data caps, which are freaking drive me crazy. I can get enraged at that right now if I wanted to. So let's say there's a game, it's 200, 300 gigs in size. Maybe you'll have the option that it's not going to download the entire thing, but as you progress through the game, it'll have the next chapter going in the background, like the next portion of the game going in the background. So that way, 2 things happen. One, you're less likely, it's more considerate of people's data caps, and 2, it's more considerate of the amount of storage you have on your system, because even a terabyte will get chewed up by 3, conceivably less than 10 games in full that you have on your storage. And maybe, let's say, you get to chapter 6 of a game, or I'm talking chapter 6, like the portion of data of the game. It says, well, you're not going to go, you don't need the first few chapters, so let's get rid of that on your hard drive. So at any given time, yes, you have a game that in total size is 300 gigs big, but you've only got about 30 gigs of it at a time on your hard drive. I think that's probably... Unless
you beat a game in a week, and then they're still going to go through all your data.
The point is, it'll keep up with you as much as possible. I could talk about this more for hours. That's going to do it for Geek Therapy Radio this week. Make sure to visit my friends at Best Automotive in Kingwood. They took care of Rowdy. They'll take care of your car. They have lots of classic cars there, too. You don't even have to get work done. Just go have a cup of coffee, talk to Aaron there, and look at the classic cars they're working on. Classic cars, modern cars. It's so cool just to go to that place. I love cars. Jeremy loves cars, too. Yoni Safra is the artist tonight. Make sure that you download all of his music. Go check him out. Download the Geek Therapy Radio podcast in your favorite podcast player. And I'll see you next week.